Welcome to the People Profit Podcast, where we explore how the best leaders unlock the full potential of the people to drive real, sustainable success. I'm Sandra Coker, CEO of Human Power Solutions and the author of the best-selling book, People Profit. And today we are having a thoughtful conversation about something every leader feels, but a few can name clearly: that quiet can't culture. It quietly kills momentum, innovation, and ownership in the organization. Our guest today, I'm so excited, is JL Heather. He is the co-founder and managing partner of Centered. JL is an executive coach who's worked with senior leaders at Fortune 500 companies, including Ford, Pfizer, T-Mobile, Walmart, and, just a few more. He is the co-author of the Agile Code and Breakthrough Innovation, and he helps leaders move from reactive management to visionary leadership that really sticks. JL, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here too. Those are a few small names that you've worked with, so we'll get into that in just a minute. If today's conversation gives you everyday practical ways to cut through the polite but unproductive conversations in your organization, please hit the like, subscribe, and share this episode with a leader who may need to hear it. Your support really does help us bring more of these honest leadership discussions to the people that can use them the most. So we appreciate your support. JL, you're ready to go?
Oh, yeah. I am absolutely ready.
All right. Sounds good. So I love this. You started off as a software engineer.
Yeah.
So immediately people think like introvert. And then
Right.
you evolved into team leadership around 2002, it looks like, and landed at MBL. And it feels like that's where you really got the front row seat to how the big organizations really work
Oh,
and
yeah.
where they break down. So can you talk a little bit about that journey for yourself?
Yeah, no, so you're absolutely right. I started out as a software engineer. Uh, I figured out I probably wasn't the best coder in the history of the world. So if I really wanted to be successful in my career, I needed to lean a little bit more into my strengths. Uh, and in all honesty, you mentioned being an introvert, and that's 100% true. I still remember in high school when we did those psychology tests, I scored off the charts on the introversion side. So I kind of figured out my strengths were more the sitting back, looking at things and kind of figuring out what was working and what wasn't, whether that was process or people. I had definitely told myself for a long time I didn't understand people. So I worked hard for a long time to correct that. When I went to VML, so VML, for your listeners who don't know, is one of the more successful marketing agencies out there. They're continually evolving. So they don't really call themselves a marketing agency anymore, at least not quite in those words, but that's kind of what they are. And when I went there, I went in as a project manager and a contractor. And I will say this about the agency world: it's a great place to get 10 years of experience in about a year. You work with a lot of different clients. You see how a lot of different things happen. It used to be in the marketing world, you only worked in marketing, but more and more in this day and age, that means you're getting exposed to their IT side, you're getting exposed to the product side, all of it. So it was an amazing experience. And I was there for about 13 years. And that's where I really got in and involved with companies like Ford, like Pfizer, like Wendy's, Walmart, like lots of great names, which it's fun to name drop. But at the end of the day, the variety of experience is probably the most valuable thing.
Yeah.
And I think more than anything, what I saw is while all these big players worked in different ways, there were a number of patterns underneath the surface that seemed to kind of drive the behavior and make the behavior very similar, even if the structure and the culture felt different. So that's kind of where this idea of can't culture came from, is looking at some of those patterns and kind of, I don't want to say codify it, but maybe raise the visibility.
I love that can't culture, phrase, and we'll get into that for just a little bit. But was there a particular moment where you realized that your real passion was helping leaders kind of move from that reactive management style to something a little bit more like, let's look at the big picture here, something more visionary?
Yeah. So it was 2003. When I did my first Agile transformation, I was still a
Yep.
software engineer at the time. And I remember because the job I was in at the time was a rough one. Uh, there were problems. I was, not super happy, and I was just getting into a team leadership role at the time. So I was out there just thinking, like, there's got to be a better way to do it. Like, this just
Yeah.
doesn't feel great. People don't seem super happy. So I went out there and just started researching. That's where I came across Scrum. That was kind of my
Hmm.
first foray into Agile. And I was pretty clumsy about it at the time, I'm sure. Like, if I went back and looked at it now with today's perspective, it would be painful. But it really hit me about the relationship between structure and culture and how that produced behavior.
Hmm.
And behavior is probably not quite the right word. Maybe it's mindset and behavior, like the
Okay.
combination of the two. And I had always heard there are no bad people, there are bad systems. And
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't think I truly believed it until that moment, right? And until when you can really start to see, oh, wait, there are some better ways to do this that are more human,
Yeah.
that take human mindsets, human behavior into account to drive better results. And when you do that, people are happier, more motivated, more engaged, all these great things. And that was kind of the tipping point for me. And it feels weird to say, like 22 years ago, I had my tipping
Yeah.
point. I
Yeah.
feel older than ever. but that was kind of
You're
the tipping
welcome.
point for me. And I kind of went down the rabbit hole of what makes people work well, feel
Yeah.
fulfilled, be motivated, and produce results that everyone can be proud of.
Nice, nice. So that's really important, I think, because like in the book for People Profit, it's all about fix your processes inside, break down your silos, and then your clients get great experience. So you just validated, that
Yeah.
concept. So when VML went through a bunch of mergers, they shifted their focus. You were like, well, I'm good. I've got a side hustle going, and I want
Yeah.
to do that full time. So talk a little bit about Centered and what that transition taught you about leadership during those
Yeah.
it's a major change.
I think one of the biggest things is as I made that transition, in full transparency, as VML was going down this path, there were layoffs.
Yeah.
And I won't say I volunteered for a layoff, but I knew it was coming. So I was preparing. And I realized what I was doing at VML wasn't necessarily aligned with where they wanted to go. So I had spent some time setting Centered up, making it ready so I could transition into that. Literally 18 months later, I had replaced and maybe even more than replaced my salary with Centered. So I was very lucky to be able to do that, have that kind of transition. I will say it was very similar to 2003. I had some nice breakthroughs of my own in that moment around why companies lay people off, what that means, and then what it actually means to take a risk yourself. I think a lot of
Mm.
people who work for a company never fully internalize some of the risks the people who own that company are taking or had to take to get to where they are.
Yeah.
So, like the
Makes
first part
sense.
of it, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said that makes sense. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
distracted. Yeah.
And the first part of it is I think a lot of people who get laid off take that as a personal thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and to this day, and I've told a number of leaders at VML, and I talked to other people about this. Anyone who's been laid off that wants to talk to me, I will give you at least 3 sessions, 3 hours of my time to work you through it and to help you through it for free because I think it's a hard moment. And I think it's something too many people are going through right now. But for me, I was prepared. I thought it would happen and I'd be like, oh, great, I can go do my own thing. But I found myself still kind of being like, man, I thought I was
Yeah.
valued more than this.
Yep.
I had a great friend, David Mitchell at VML, who told me a while ago feedback is information, not truth. And it took me a moment to remember that. But once I did, I started looking at the layoff. That said more about what VML was doing. And that's not a critique, right? What
Yeah.
they were doing,
Yeah.
the restructuring, every company does that. But it said more about what they were doing than it did about me. And the fact that I still have so many friends and colleagues at VML who I speak to this day, that says more about the value I created than the layoff would say, and to the contrary.
Right.
So I think that taught me how powerful perspective and mindset really is, because you never test that sort of thing until things get bad. And then
I
in
think,
terms of, yeah, go.
yeah, no, I think that that's really powerful for people because I mean, I have several friends recently,
Yeah.
colleagues, contacts at my businesses who have been laid off in the last month. And
Yep.
I'm going to send this recording even before it even airs to them because I think it's really key. It's information for you,
Right.
and it says more about them than about you. And I think a lot of people do take it seriously. I was fired and I took it very personally.
Yeah. It's hard
But I
not
was,
to, right?
but like you, I was like, I saw the writing was on the wall. So I
Right.
was ready to go when it was time to go. So super interesting. We could go down that rabbit hole for a long time, but we're not. So I want to get back to a little bit about your coaching because I
Yeah.
think that what you offer is really good. So you've coached a lot of leaders and like some of the biggest companies in the world. Is, as you look at that and you kind of take a look at your career, what's a pattern that you see over and over again that holds like even the most talented teams back?
Ooh. I mean, there's a good number of them. The one, all right. So this is one I love to talk about a lot. You have an issue, you have a decision you have to make. A
Mm-hmm.
single person making that decision within an organization, the chances of that person self-censoring a concern could be pretty high. It kind of depends on the culture, the structure, all that sort of stuff, but it could be pretty high. And most leaders recognize that fact,
Yeah.
right? They know that if all we're doing is looking at individuals, the chance of them not saying something that's totally within them. So let's mitigate that risk. Instead of just one individual, let's get 8 people together in a room and let's talk about this decision. And because now that's 8 chances for someone to raise a concern, right?
Mm.
And we do, I hope, I'm guessing that sounds very familiar for all of your listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reality is, like, this is one of the most insidious, like, simple versions of can't culture out there, because it's not 8 chances, because that's not how people work, right? The first person who talks that doesn't raise that issue establishes a norm in the room that there's not an issue, that we can't
Yeah.
talk about it. So the next person is a little less likely, the next person is a little less likely, and so on. By the time you get to that end of the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
you've gone through the whole meeting and you've achieved consensus, right? You've talked through the decision, and
Yeah.
8 people had maybe 8 different concerns that didn't get voiced. Yet everyone walks out of that room going, well, maybe I was wrong, because no one else said anything. So now people are more sure than ever that they can't talk about their concerns because no one else did. It's a
Why is
form
that
of
so common?
groupthink. Well,
Why is
it's
it?
human nature, right? We
Yeah.
seek out reassurance. And there's this asymmetry of accountability in terms of raising an issue versus not. So think
Right.
about it this way. If you're a leader and you have a decision to invest 10% of your revenue in something new,
Yep.
if you say, yes, let's do it, and then it fails, that is career limiting, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
probably the
Yeah.
mild way to
Yeah.
put it, right?
Okay.
If you say no, no one knows. Like, it just quietly goes away. And maybe your competitor does it 3 months later and it works out and
Mm.
they pull ahead of you in the market, right? Bigger impact by saying nothing, but it
Yeah.
felt way safer than saying something. And it's what we call an omission bias.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really powerful moment. And then when you put that into a group of people, that omission bias becomes multiplicative, not additive, right? So those are the things we see when we talk about culture, and the idea of can't culture. It's a little bit of a misnomer, right? Because it focuses on the culture side of things, but you can't separate culture and structure. That
Right.
meeting
Right.
had a lot of structure to it, as well as the culture behind it.
So, as a leader, would you advise a leader to, you know, express the doubt, that might be coming, like kind of set that up, like, hey, some of you guys might be thinking this, right? It's kind of like when I facilitate and you get you got 15 people in the room and one person is just kind of sitting there, right? It's really difficult. So I tend to call those people out, like, hey, what's happening today? You happy to be here, right? Like, just kind of breaking that mood so that not everybody's brought down. So would you advise a leader to say, think through all the things that your team might be thinking and bring it up first, or would you let it go?
So, in terms of what leaders can do around that situation, there are a few things that work really well. One is pay very close attention to who speaks first.
Okay.
Um, Simon Sinek has a really good perspective on that, like leaders speak last kind of thing, which is very, very true. So I think pay attention to who speaks first. Two, make sure people are really clear on what's going on in that meeting.
Mm,
The way I like to frame it is make the cost of dissent cheaper than the cost of staying silent. The
okay.
reason people stay silent, that asymmetric accountability, is it's a lot cheaper for them to say nothing than it is for them to say something. So you got to look for ways to bring that cost down. One thing you can do, have people write down their concerns before you start talking.
Okay.
Writing it down, documenting it makes it far easier to bring it up later.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask questions like, what is the biggest risk to this plan that we haven't talked about yet? Right now,
Yeah.
raising that dissent
Yeah.
becomes participation rather than pushback. So there are
Mm.
things like that. You can elect a devil's advocate. Sandra, your job in this meeting is to poke holes in everything I'm saying, right? That's a really powerful thing as a leader, to say you have permission and that is your job. Because
It's
that
your
means at some
job.
point in the meeting, I can look at you and say, Sandra, what do you think? And you can get that smile on your face, be like, haha, it's my turn now.
Yeah.
Right? And
Right.
dive right in. So I think there's a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
interesting to me. Like, one of the things we do at Centered a lot is focus on how organizations innovate. And when innovation requires people to challenge this current system, it requires people to think about new ways. And if you can't find ways to make your meetings more productive in idea generation and more efficient in filtering those ideas, you're never going to innovate. So this
Yeah.
is it's something as simple as just the meetings that you run can make a huge difference in the outcomes you get.
So with that being said, you also talked in your intake that there's three diagnostic questions that cut through this without triggering defensiveness. What are those three questions? And walk us through how a new leader, because we focus on the newer leaders here, could use them like in a conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find them just to make sure I get them right.
That's fine. I should have warned you.
No, and it's totally fine, because we actually, that 3-question model we use in a few
Yeah.
places. So I'll give you one very specific example. Uh, Oftentimes, people view hierarchy as a really strong constraint, right?
Okay.
So there was a guy in NASA. Let me see. I'll get the actual right data here, because his name is important. Some people may want to look him up. Rodney Rocha. All right, so
Okay.
he was the NASA engineer, and the day after Columbia launched. So I think most people will remember Columbia. If not, I'm older than I thought.
I got you.
When it launched, they saw a piece of foam
Yeah.
fall off and hit the left wing, right? They needed to get satellite images to check what the damage was. Rodney, he had an email written. He believed what he was doing was right. His finger was literally hovering over the send button and he didn't press it. 17 days later, 7 astronauts died,
Yeah.
right? Rodney was not a bad person,
Right.
right? But in his own words, he said something along the lines on an ABC interview of like, I was down here and she was way up here. Hierarchy was the issue,
Yeah.
right? I guarantee every listener here has had a moment like that, not with the same risks and things like that, but they've had
Consequences.
those moments where they've been, man, I should send this,
Mm-hmm.
but the omission is probably cheaper for me. Bless you. So to fight that, we have three questions. And what we do when we coach people on this is we want to write these answers down. First is, what specifically do I believe will happen if I raise this at the level where the decision lives? Because oftentimes our fear, it kind of dies a little bit when we write down the reality, or at least what we think. So that's the first question. The second question, what is my actual evidence that it will happen? So what have I seen happen here? Who has it happened to? Or am I importing fear from somewhere else? At a certain point in your career, you have some professional trauma that's following you around, right? Just because everyone's had that bad boss, that bad job. So how much of that are you carrying with you? And then the last question is, what does silence cost and who pays it? Oftentimes when we think about silence, we're thinking about it from a personal perspective. And Rodney's silence at the moment didn't cost him anything.
Interesting.
But it did cost 7 other people a lot. Yeah. And I think if he sat down and wrote these questions, wrote out the answers to these questions, he would have had a different perspective. And the nice thing is, once you send that email, there's documentation, right? You don't have to be confrontational. That documentation. And I think if I remember right, Rodney even showed that email to some other people in the organization, and they were like, ooh, man, that's kind of risky. There were procedural issues with how to get access to the right stuff, all that sort of. So there was a lot of what we call structural cant, as well as hierarchical risk, that got in the way of sending that email. But I think really what we try and do with our sets of 3 questions, which are kind of situational, is help people figure out what the situation is, what is the right context, what is the most productive perspective they can have on that situation, and then what is the next action they should take.
That's really heavy.
Yeah, I mean, most of our decisions don't involve other people's lives.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they may involve their careers. And there's story after story, whether you look at Kodak, Blockbuster, Nokia, BlackBerry, the NASA is one. There's some from the CIA. You just go on and on. Sears, if you want to go way back. Bell Labs, with Alexander Graham Bell, with the invention of the telephone and how that overtook the telegraph, over and over and over again, you can see where there were moments where people could have done something but didn't, probably because they weren't aware of the structural and cultural cant that was getting in the way.
Yeah. Do you think that emotional intelligence plays into this at all? Just reading the room, like a leader reading the room, and just, do you think that plays a part?
It absolutely does. I mean, the data on that is pretty indisputable. They've shown over and over again, your most effective people tend to score higher on emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Now, what I want to be careful of is it's very tempting to look at someone like Rodney and say, they're a little deficient there, didn't quite have the emotional intelligence, or to look at the leader and talk about, oh man, they didn't pick up on that, that's their fault. There is still a huge element of the system, right? Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the system, what we try and do is we try and give people tools to evaluate the cants in the system. Our biggest one, it's called the choose framework. Okay. So it's this idea of the first job of the leader is to catch the cant. So that's the C. I'll go through all of this real quick, and then we can talk about any part of it that you want. So C, catch the cant. Make sure you realize, hey, there's someone here saying we can't. That should be the first thing that pings your antennae. Then honor the constraint. What are the real constraints here? A lot of times we say can't when we're masking a decision. So if there is a constraint, let's call it out and make sure we're aware of it. And if there are other things that aren't constraints, let's start talking about those. And then let's move to the next step, which is outline the trade-off. Because as soon as we say can't and hide a decision in a constraint, we're no longer talking about the trade-off. So once we've got past that, we need to outline them. Yeah. Next, you have to own the choice. Make sure you realize you are making a choice. Your name is going on something. And you have to be very specific. Are we dealing with a haven't or a won't? We've decided not to do it, or we haven't been able to do it yet. And at that point, you can move on to selecting the next move. Like, what are you going to do? And then lastly, hopefully everyone realizes this is the logical next step. You have to embed the learning. And you have to do it in a way that promotes better choices, better choose in the future.
Yeah. So in that regard, that learning piece, your book also tackles that 70% failure rate of the agile transformations, right?
Yeah.
And how to build culture. So in that L&D piece, like, what's the blind spot there? I mean, agile is such a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time it's the catch the can't. So I was at the Boys and Girls Club out here in Lawrence, Kansas a while back, talking to their leaders and their teachers about can't, because once you start thinking about can't, like one of the first places you see it is when kids are saying things like, I just can't do math, or I can't do like whatever, like it pops up so early. The reality is, so often, like most people hear a kid say, oh, I'm just not good at math. We get it. You just got to work harder, right?
Yeah.
Rather than challenging the fact that kid just said, hey, I can't do math. I'm just not good at math is the same as saying, I just can't do math.
Yeah.
Most people completely gloss over that. And that's true with kids. That's true in the professional world as well. So more often than not, once you get people starting to look for the can'ts, they start to see them everywhere. And they start, once you get them to start questioning, like, is that really a can't? That's a big deal, because people don't tend to fully internalize how disempowering that can't is. When a kid says, I just can't do math, they stop trying, because they know, like, even if I tried, I can't do it. But when they say, hey, I'm not good at math yet, right? It's kind of that growth mindset, which, there's some question in terms of like the growth mindset and how impactful it actually is. It's still important, especially from a motivation standpoint, because if you've made the decision that, hey, math, I'm not going to need calc 2 to own a clothing business, or whatever it is, right? Awesome. You've made a conscious decision that's empowering, rather than saying, I couldn't do math, so I went this way. Right. That was something that was done to you rather than a decision you made. So I think that's the blind spot people are really missing. They aren't seeing the can'ts, and they don't realize how disempowering they are for them and their people.
Wow. I'm thinking about my grandchildren right now. And,
yeah. Well, and here's something else to think about, right? So you mentioned the 70% fail rate in innovation. I think there's another way to look at this that maybe should scare people even more. So there's two things to think about. One is came out of the Harvard Business Review, and it's called the Bureaucratic Mass Index, right? And it looks at what the cost of bureaucracy is in the world. Mm-hmm. There's also the State of the Global Workplace report, from the latest one is 2006, that looks at engagement and what a lack of engagement costs. So right now, they're stating about 20% of people are engaged at work. So if you are listening to this and you've done an engagement survey and you're like, oh man, like 60, 70% of people are engaged, that's wrong. They are not. It's about 20%. But between those two, they kind of correlate to each other. They estimated, and there's a Gallup poll that did this, has the same findings. They've estimated that there's about a $10 trillion cost per year worldwide that just goes out and is no value because of these things. And that's about 10% of the world's GDP. So like, take a moment to think about that. $10 trillion, 10% of GDP just gone because of the way we think about some of these things. I won't go so far as to say it's all culture of can't. That might be overinflating my own idea here, but right. But the scale of this is huge, which means the upside, the opportunity is equally huge.
Yeah. So I think I all of that is just really great. You talk a little bit about the definition of leadership is the positive application of social influence to maximize the value of effort of others towards a shared goal.
Yeah.
How does that show up differently? Like, we've got hybrid workplaces, we've got remote workplaces, we've got people that are in 3 days a week. They don't see each other, compared to when we started, we were all together 5 days a week, So talk a little bit about that.
So that definition is one I came up with a long time ago, and I'm a big fan of it. I've tried to pressure test it at conferences and other places, and it's come out pretty solid. I think that there's kind of two big things that I would pull out of it for this conversation. One is this idea of social influence. Traditional views on leadership tend to be very focused on authority and
Yep.
usually positional authority.
Command and control.
Right. So anyone who's listening who went through Psych 101, you may remember a guy named Stanley Milgram. He did this experiment where he had two people come in and they drew straws. One person was the learner and the other person was the teacher, right? And the teacher sat down in front of this panel that had all these different voltages on it, and the learner was taken to another room and hooked up, and the teacher would ask them questions. Every time they got a question wrong, they'd hit one of the buttons. That person would be like, "Oh my God, you shocked me." And they'd ask the question again. And if they got it wrong, they went up a voltage, and so on and so on. When you look at this panel, like you can see, like it's getting more and more dramatic. Like you can see at the end, it's like 3X's. Like if you hit that button, maybe you might kill them, kind of thing. As they're going through this, the person has stronger and stronger reactions. I've talked about this at a number of conferences, and I always ask people, so it's probably been thousands of people at this point, and I just kind of go, who would stop here? Who would stop here? Who would stop here? And pretty much every hand is up about halfway.
Mm.
So pretty much everyone thinks in their own head, oh, I would stop way early. In the experiment, everyone went, if I remember right, about 2/3 of the way. And I think like 60% of the people, 2/3 of the people went all the way. Because every time they got uncomfortable, they looked at the guy behind him in the lab coat and he would just say, please continue. So they did, right? I've had one person who said they might go all the way in one conference, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that person was thinking of someone specific, but but the thing that Stanley Milgram was showing is authority has the ability to take away someone's agency.
Yeah.
And as soon as you take away someone's agency, they're not solving problems on their own. They're looking to you to solve the problems. And in today's world, we don't have time for that.
No.
We need people who are solving problems right away, people who are close to the customers, who understand what those customers are suffering and alleviating that pain in a way that's profitable for the company and equitable for their customer.
Well,
So the moment,
and we don't have the cubicle, like we don't have
right,
the physical togetherness to be able to go to the leader.
right, which makes that authority even more dangerous because it creates more delay. So one of the first things I always tell leaders in remote environments is you have to find a way to delegate authority, not tasks, authority.
Yeah.
You have to take people from this agentic state and give them their autonomy back. And that means not only do you have to stop relying on authority and start relying on social influence, you have to make sure the why is clear. I do think a lot of people get kind of weirded out by that idea of social influence. So one of the examples I give, so Sandra, imagine this: you're standing at a bus stop, rain's pouring down, you've got an umbrella, you're doom scrolling on your phone like we all do, and you've never met me before. I just walk up to you and I say, "Hey, can I borrow your phone?" What is the chance that you would actually loan me your phone?
0.
I would hope so, right? Like, strange guy walks up to you and says, "Hey, can I borrow your phone?" Right? If I walk up to you and I said, "Hey, man, this weather sucks. I'm sorry about the weather. Could I borrow your phone?" Would it change your answer?
No.
Everyone says that, but you're multiple times more likely to loan me your phone than you were before, and they've studied it.
I would think about it. I would hesitate.
Right.
I would think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just created a connection between us. We now have a shared experience. I'm not just some weird guy trying to borrow your phone. We are now two people suffering in the rain. That's social influence. So as leaders, if I come up and say, "Hey, give me your phone," chances are people are going to be like, no. But if I have some influence, if I create some of that shared experience, the chances of people engaging and moving forward with me take off. And there's story after story after story about how influence does this. Yeah. So influence can be far more powerful than authority, especially in remote environments, but it requires to make sure people know where they're going, what value is. And this is where I fall back on an example Simon Sinek gives, where he talks about, hey, if I put you in a corner and I say, pick a random spot, and I need you to walk in a straight line to that spot, straight line. And as you're walking, I put a chair in front of you. Chances are you're going to stop because I said straight line.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I put you back in that corner and I say, okay, that corner over here, we have to get there. It's super critical. I would love it if you walk in a straight line, but the goal is get there. And this time, if I put the chair in front of you, you're just going to walk around it. You're going to move it. You're just going to keep going. Because when we don't understand the why, if we don't understand the value we're trying to create, we become very process focused. When we do understand what the value is, we can become value obsessed. And the difference is, and you'll see this in a lot of PMOs, are you counting the steps? Are you counting the boxes checked? Or are you measuring the distance traveled?
Yeah.
If you're counting the steps and the boxes checked, you're process obsessed, right? Yeah. People don't understand. If you're counting how far you've moved, how close you are to a solution, how much value you've created, now you're value obsessed. So you pair that with influence, and that's when you have a fully empowered team that owns solutions that can just create value. And that is what makes remote teams successful. It's what makes co-located teams successful.
And going back to Agile, and obviously I'm in the L&D space, it's the check the box training. Like we're going through Agile and we're checking box, or we're going through whatever training, we're checking the box, versus the why and what's our end goal. Right. That's powerful for, I think, our listeners to be thinking about is that piece of not just going through the process, but really, diving into your passion, why we're doing it, and getting their buy-in of all that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and especially in L&D space, a lot of it is also about risk management.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's so interesting. The whole thing is so interesting.
Oh yeah. No, like I said, I could keep going all day on this stuff. Yeah.
Well, I would love to, but we can't. But I have a little rapid fire segment. So if you're up for some quick hits with some quick answers, I would love if you want to participate.
Yeah, let's give it a try.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So what's one leadership phrase that you wish we could get rid of forever?
I'm not sure exactly what the phrase is. I might change it a little bit. The idea is I have to know.
Okay. Nice.
Because I think so many leaders subconsciously, if not consciously, feel like they have to be the source of answers. And that is in a direct opposition to everything we just talked about influence and value creation.
What is the biggest myth about Agile transformations?
Oh, so there's two. I'll give you two on this one real quick. One, you need to have a formalized structure like Scrum, Safe, or something like that. Scrum, Safe, those types of things, they're marketed as one size fits all, and there is no such thing, and that's really, really dangerous. Two, the myth that Agile is faster. And what I mean by that is a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to deliver in half the time. That may be true, but what's more likely is you're going to deliver something 10 times more valuable in the same time.
Gotcha. Okay, nice. All right. I'd love to get out, but we're not. What's one question every leader should ask their team?
We talked about it a little bit earlier. I'm a huge fan of what's the biggest risk, biggest thing, whatever that we haven't talked about so far. Yeah. I think it lowers the cost of raising concerns and turns it into participation. And I think it's very eye-opening. Yeah.
If you could give every new manager a piece of advice, what's the one thing that you would tell them?
You have to learn how to accept feedback without being defensive. The one thing that will kill your ability to grow as a leader is when your people stop telling you what you're doing wrong. And if you think you're not doing anything wrong, you are largely incorrect. And if no one's telling you, and if there is silence, if no one's giving you feedback, you've done something to create that environment.
That is great stuff. I love that. So, in one sentence, if you could think about this conversation that we've had, and we've kind of bounced everywhere, but what's one, what's one leadership shift that you hope every leader who's listening today would make after hearing today's conversation?
We talked about can't culture. It is very easy as a leader to feel personally attacked by the idea that can't culture exists within your organization. So I think it's important for every leader to realize that this is human nature, that they are fighting gravity. They are not necessarily doing something wrong. And to set aside the idea that they've screwed up in some way, and to give themselves some grace so they can actually do things in a different way for better results. Uh, I think one of the main reasons leaders don't change is because they're afraid of what that failure, and I say that with air quotes in case people
Right.
aren't watching the video, they're afraid of what that failure says about them. And if they don't know, there's this great framework around failure. I'm going to try and find it real quick just so people have it if I can. It comes from Amy Edmondson. She talks about three types of failure: basic, complex, and intelligent failure. 9 times out of 10, understanding the difference in those three things, and I'm not going to go into it now, so go look it up. The difference in those types of failures, it's really important, and it will help leaders understand sometimes that failure is okay and they can move forward and they can own it rather than them feel threatened by it.
Definitely look that up. JL, thank you. That was excellent. You just brought so much depth and clarity today to this conversation, and it's so much value.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you. So that's a wrap for another episode of the People Profit Podcast. If JL's insights on breaking the can't culture, there's air quotes for you guys listening. If it gave you something to act on, please again, like, subscribe, and share this episode with a leader who needs it. JL, before we go, can you tell our listeners the best way to connect with you and learn about Centered?
Yeah, we're really active on LinkedIn. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, that would be great. I love to engage there. And then centered.work is our website. That's where you can find out more about what we do, the design sprints, the innovation consultancy, and the leadership coaching. It's all there. You can read about it and you can find a lot of information. But all in all, like if you connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a direct message. I'm always happy to have a conversation.
I love that. So everybody, make sure that you reach out to JL and check his work. We're really excited. Check out his book, all the good things there. So for sure. Thank you again, JL. I really, really do appreciate your time. Appreciate it.
No problem. This was a lot of fun.
Great. And leaders, remember, the most powerful influence is the one applied with clarity and care. I'm Sandra Coker. Keep investing in your people, and we'll see you next time.